Hello, it's Paula from Earth Moves here again, and I am so excited because I'm with two of my beautiful best friends and educators. Susie and Kitty run a beautiful family business. They are twin sisters. They run a business called Twintage, which sells vintage clothes, and they do a personal service as well, so they'll help you to style you and things like that. I just love them so much. They're so glamorous, they're so fun, and they're so warm and friendly as well. And they have really educated me about fast fashion, which I didn't really think about that much until I met them. And I've bought quite a few pieces from them so far. And now I've vowed to myself, I'm never going to go and buy cheap clothes from Primark and things like that when there's so much to choose from. In the vintage world that isn't depleting the world's resources. So this is beautiful Susie and beautiful Kitty, absolutely lovely girls.
Hi Paula.
Hi girls.
Hello.
Could you guys tell me about your Twintage business, please?
Yeah, sure. So Twintage sort of came about really as a collaboration. We'd already kind of established our individual businesses, and then we decided that we wanted to sort of incorporate our personalities, being twins and then vintage. So, you know, there's the name Twintage today, jazz hands. And yeah, it's just a way for us to like come together at events, interact with the public, and yeah, do what we do, really do what we're passionate about. What do you think, Kitty?
Yeah, I think that's about right, really. So we've both been, our background's sort of design. My background's I did a degree in surface pattern design, so I'm very interested in prints and history of fashion generally, with the social history involved as well. Yeah, and just so my passion came from there, and then sort of got into selling vintage clothes and started my own business. I worked for someone previously before that. And yeah, I've been doing it for a long time, just really passionate about the recycling aspect of it, obviously, especially, you know, environmental issues and how much ends up in landfill and that. And generally the older the pieces, the better they're made, the quality, the fabric, they'll last longer, really.
Yeah, sure.
Could you just stand up and give us a twirl and sit down again so we can see this fabulous dress and talk about it? I really love it, and it really looks nice on you. And you know, I'm looking at it close up, and it looks like it could be bought, you know, last week.
Yeah.
It's in excellent condition. Can you tell us a little bit about this dress?
Yeah, so this is actually, believe it or not, even looks very modern. It's an original 1940s piece, and it's from St. Michael's, so everyone will know that as Marks and Sparks. The label actually says St. Michael's, and it's a CC41 piece, which means that it was made during wartime restrictions. What does it stand for again, CC41?
It stands for Controlled Commodity
41.
CC41.
And that's when it came into being in 1941. That's why it says 41. And that actually rationing went into the early 50s in the UK. So basically, so it was made within that period, and it's just fabulous. It's novelty print, and the way it's made.
What's the print, Kitty?
It's mushrooms. Whether you can see it, it's fabulous.
Is it magic?
I hope so. I hope the magic.
Maybe we need to lick your skirt.
And the way it's made as well, it's quite narrow on the skirt because of materials. Again, with the CC41 label, it had to be done with so much material, and they were only allowed so many things.
A lot of restrictions, weren't there?
Yeah, because of the wartime effort and saving supplies, rationing. Yeah.
What techniques did people use then for print? How did they use, what dyes and colours did they use that was different from today, perhaps?
What do you think?
I think, well, regarding fabric, I mean, I haven't really got a background in textile design like Kitty, but regarding fabric, a lot of natural fabrics we use, but then a lot of rayon fabrics as well.
Man-made.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain fabrics that will last the test of time, so like sturdy cottons. That's why we've got pieces from the 1930s that are still wearable today. Other more delicate fabrics like silk and lame, you know, they're deteriorate over time. So yeah, it's kind of really, we're just trying to keep that alive and trying to
Can you guys share with us what how, because I didn't realise till you educated me in this matter that it wasn't until the 70s that people became interested in vintage fashion. Could you explain that again, please?
Probably more the 60s, yeah, 60s, 70s. I think, I think it's, so obviously people would make do amend and wear probably fashions previously, like we have a lot of 1940s dresses that are probably were 1930s possibly, and they've been shortened to sort of more knee length.
Yeah.
And
Adapted to the fashion.
adapted to the fashion of the period, and also then the excess fabric probably would have been used.
Trim hats, make accessories.
Yeah, but
Greece,
I think the
Every bit of
60s,
fabric was used.
there was the explosion of swing in London, swing in 60s, and then they started to have boutiques and places in London where they would sell vintage clothing, and that would be a fashion. It would be quite a kind of mix, very sort of everyone mixed things up quite a lot, didn't they? Like almost like a dressing up box sort of
Quite
vibe.
bohemian, yeah.
Quite bohemian. So they'd wear and mix lots of different eras, I think, and antiques. And
I think though it
Quite
really goes back
fashionable.
along before that, because maybe it wasn't called vintage, but there's always been a history of reusing and recycling, because before the advent of mass production of clothing, you know, people made their own and were handed down. So you would get someone, say, in the 1920s, maybe of a certain age, wearing something from the late 1900s. So yeah, it's kind of...
Susie, I'd love you to get that red dress out and tell us
sure.
about it. It's so beautiful.
So here we have here, yeah, just one of my pieces. Is an original late 1930s, early 40s crepe
So beautiful.
dress, and the decoration is actually studs. I don't know if you want to zoom in on, on those studs.
Like
It's
pyramid
in
studs, aren't they?
absolutely immaculate condition.
Yeah.
Such good condition, isn't it?
A metal zip on the side. So one way you can actually tell or date an item usually is if there's a zip on the side or poppers on the side or at the nape of the neck there. It indicates that a dress is, or an item is earlier, quite an early sort of 20th century item.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so like Susie says, normally it's 50s and afterwards that you'd get more zips on
All the way
all
down
the way
the
down.
back.
That's more of a 60s feature, or 50s still. I think quite often had a zip on the side, but going in later 50s probably it was more. Yeah.
So during sort of wartime, just a quick sort of word about the studs and the decoration. In fact, I think there's some metal stud work on Kitty's hat that she's wearing.
yeah.
Yes,
So
that's nice.
basically in the 40s and probably previous to that, everyday sort of objects, I suppose, and everyday materials were used to decorate clothing and accessories, and we now call it sort of the make, do, amend sort of culture, which is, I think, really important, especially for sustainability. What do you think?
Yeah,
Kitty?
well, yeah, because you can reuse like sort of decorative bit pieces from clothes that are maybe disintegrated and not wearable. But going back to the studs and also sequins, during the 40s, they weren't rationed. So decorations such as sequins and studs were used to jazz up items of clothing
Fascinating.
because they weren't actually restricted. So you get a lot of plain outfits with like a lot of sort of beading and lots of sequin or stud details around, especially around the top, because they weren't restricted. So it was an easy way of jazzing up an outfit.
And the knitwear as well. Is that something that has kind of like carried on the designs and patterns to contemporary wear, or is this like very specific to the time?
Yeah, so these two pieces here are actually original 1940s items. As you can see, this is
So
a jumper
pretty.
and this is a cardigan.
Gorgeous.
The different sort of colour threads would be a fantastic way of actually reusing and using up bits of scraps of like wool that you might have.
Wow.
And it's actually called Farrell. I mean, the Farrell pattern and the Farrell sort of like this one here, it goes back obviously a long time, originates in Scotland.
And there's an actual CC41 label here, which means this was made. It's got a label, so this was made during wartime restrictions. And like my sister said, a lot of them are repairs. So you got a lot of repairs because people
that
would repair
lovely?
them, like hand repair items. But like Susie said, people would actually unravel pieces that maybe were no longer wearable, or even men's wear, because men's were off at war, so they would unravel pieces that weren't getting used. And also the same with hats. So a lot of women would use their men's old suits that weren't getting used for years and years in the wardrobe and turn them into lady suits. And there was actually books issued, and you could buy them, or I'm not sure people purchased them or they were given. So it would show you during the 40s how to turn your men's suits into women's. And then men's trilby hats were trimmed and reshaped into little toy sort of tilt hats and stuff. Yeah.
What is the difference between purple one's lovely? Yeah. Between like stuff made, in the 40s and 50s, maybe 60s, and stuff made now? Is there a difference in quality? Because these have aged so well.
Well, that's why I thought I'd just pick up these two items, because believe it or not, these are actually reproductions. So they're reproductions to original pattern.
How do they tell the difference?
Hand knitted. So using the same method, the same materials.
All wool, probably. Yeah. 100% wool.
This is a sort of more of a lacy sort of crochet knit, and then this one is a fair iron, quite heavy, quite close knit wool. But yeah, there's many people, using the same methods and similar or same materials and fabrics and notions. So a lot of buttons are original that they use on reproduction. Because you'll find that there's lots of like old factory stock with buttons on the original cards still. Sorry, I haven't got an example of those at the moment, but yeah.
That's really
So also there's quite a scene, I think, for reproduction knitwear. There's quite a lot of people doing it. It's quite a sort of big in those circles, isn't it? It's quite lots of people do reproduction knits, which is I think fabulous, keeping the craft alive.
Yeah,
really, isn't it? Handcraft.
It's an art form. It really is. It takes a lot of skill.
A lot of things that women do are always demoted into not being art forms just because women do it.
Exactly.
And textiles and knitting and things and embroidery, to me, it's certainly an art form. It takes creativity, it takes skill, it takes awareness of colour, texture. Just as a contrast, I'm just looking at this beautiful azute. Am I saying that right?
Your suit, yeah.
The way the sun is glittering on the azute. Can we talk about the piece of the shawl and the dress from the 20s? Absolutely, it's real silver, isn't it, in azute?
I'm not sure it's real silver. It's definitely metal.
Is it like hammered metal?
Yeah, hammered metal. So I don't know tons and tons about it, but
it's really heavy.
I think it originates in the Middle East, doesn't it?
Yeah, they make it in Egypt, I know that.
Yeah, Egypt, yeah. So pieces like this were very popular, and there was an Egyptian revival in the 20s and the 30s, quite to do with the rediscovery of Tutankhamun by Howard Carter. So big, huge Egypt mania in the 20s and the 30s. Egypt revival it was called. So this piece is just amazing quality. And it's hammered metal.
So how old is this now, this piece?
I'd probably say it was from the 20s, would you?
Yeah.
It's in
1920s.
It's on like a two-lay sort of net background, and then the metal pieces are like hammered
into the net, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like hand hammered, so it's very.
And don't know if you can see, there's actually pattern. So there's like a figure holding hands.
Yeah, which is really nice. You get different patterns. And I'll just go on to the next piece, which is quite a rare. So you get these shawls, mostly in like cream and black, but you do get them in different colours, like this one, a bit rarer probably in different colours. But this is quite a rare piece. Don't really come across this very often. So this is, so you'd get, maybe people might make dresses out of the shawls nowadays or later periods, but this is actually, I think, an original from the period. 1920s dress made from the suit. You've got the gold.
Because of the length, Kitty, I think it could be even maybe a bit earlier, maybe late teens.
Yeah, it could even be late teens.
Because of the length, because in the 20s, the hemlines moved throughout the year, throughout the decade of the 20s, but they were generally not really longer than mid-calf. And that's.
I think evening wear was sometimes longer, but yeah, I know what you're saying. Or maybe early 20s.
So what would people wear underneath that?
do you think people would have worn?
Well, it depends how risque you wanted to be.
So were people risque enough to wear nothing underneath?
I don't really know. I mean, it's a personal thing, really, isn't it? I'd probably say majority of people would wear like a slip underneath.
Right.
Yeah,
So like a
yeah.
plain slip.
Yeah,
Yeah, or even like a coloured slip to, because we've got to remember the 1920s they
Black
didn't
and
live in black
white.
and white. You know,
Yeah.
they use a lot of bright colours.
Yeah.
Quite often quite garish colours.
they?
Yeah, I think eyeshadow and hair dye. It's not a modern phenomenon using brightly coloured and pastel coloured hair dyes. You know, they were very popular in the 20s and 30s.
No.
Yeah.
So people had coloured hair?
Yeah.
No way. How have I got this old and not even knew that?
This is another piece from the 20s, which is really
Oh,
nice.
that's made so perfectly.
So like hand,
Oh,
so this is coming from on from
gorgeous.
the hand knitting as well. This is hand crocheted, and it's got its original belt with tassels. So it's a dropped waist sort of style. So yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it?
It's so beautiful.
So many hours of
So many
work.
hours of hard work.
Yeah, it's gone into that, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's quite long actually, isn't it?
Have you worn that before, Kitty?
No, I haven't
Oh, you
worn this
should
yet. I need to. I
wear
need to
it.
get a slip for it though.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really beautiful. Like the hand work on
That's
that.
like real special wear for a wedding, though. Something like
Yeah,
that dress,
definitely.
isn't it? It's absolutely gorgeous.
Should I talk about some more 20s and
Oh,
30s?
can we look at the green?
Oh, yeah,
Green
I was
is
gonna
so
get this.
stunning.
So
oh,
this-
wow, like a princess's.
This is probably one of my favourite pieces. I've not actually worn it yet, but
It's beyond
I haven't had it that long
stunning.
actually. Got it.
So
from
what
this year.
period is this from?
This is from the 1930s. Definitely old
Full
Hollywood
skirt
glam.
for dancing.
Yeah,
Oh,
So
and
would
it's
have been one as a
the
dance dress, wouldn't it?
details. So very much in the lights, dancing. It would have caught the attention of people. It's gold lame and green, as you can see, and it would shimmer. And then you've got these gorgeous sort of velvet details as well to it. And it's just epitome of sort of Hollywood sort of evening wear, really, isn't it? So yeah, it's really, really, really beautiful. Very
Should we have a look at the back, Kitty?
yeah, it would have been quite expensive, I think, in
So
its
we've
day.
got here quite a low back.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so a lot of features of the 1930s were back, so people showed their back quite a lot.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
very much an erogenous stone.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah,
a
we will.
sexy kind of way, I suppose, to show skin without it being very kind of.
And that comes actually something I read about Hollywood, how the 20s were very free, and a lot of the films were very risque from the 20s. They didn't have the censorship. The censorship came in the 1930s, and a way
there was
there
was a code, wasn't there?
was a code, and the way they could get away with a bit more revealing clothing in film and TV and whatnot was the back. So they showed a lot of back because that wasn't against the code. So yeah, so you'll find a lot of films from the 20s are very out there, really, I suppose. Because talking about the 20s as well, it was very much hedonistic, live for the day. To do with war, I think a lot of the war, the First World War.
it was a
really
reaction.
shook people.
It was a reaction after the horrors of the First World War. Really, you know, people just knew that life was short and it was for living.
So how much do you think that fashion reflects the current economy, the current zeitgeist, philosophy, relationship to religion? How much would you say that the things that we choose to wear are a reflection of that?
I think it's really, really important because at the end of the day, I think fashion and the items of clothing that we wear, they really reflect us as people, but as a wider society, I think as well, don't they? I mean, I just love when people are comfortable in their own skin
So do I.
and just, you know, express that through clothing, and that's really how I got into vintage fashion. You know, I wanted something that would reflect my personality and be unique, but also that was ethical. You know, that's
Do you know,
always
I've been
important to me.
researching about fast fashion and the knock-on effects it has in countries like Africa, who import a lot of stuff from charity shops that we won't
Yeah.
buy, and it's really having a negative effect on their economy. So I think the business that you girls do, and I've met a few other people who deal in vintage fashion, but you girls have really got something else, you know, so much charm and personality and knowledge as well. I have learned so much and I'm learning so much about fashion from you two, and I like antiques and things like that, and upcycling and stuff, and I like to think of the story. Who's had this table? Have they put their little coffee down or played cards on it? And then there's a whole like history of this object. Do you guys ever fantasize around who's had this dress on, this beautiful 20s lady with bleach blonde hair or something? Do you ever like fantasize together about that?
I think for us as well, it's always been a way to kind of almost escapism, I think, because sometimes the world is not a nice place, unfortunately, and I think fashion, and especially the history of fashion, is a way that you can actually sort of travel back in time, I suppose. Time travel.
Well, I know something, you girls are just light bringers, and you always bring a sense of fun and happiness to the situation, and people should definitely check out your Instagram, Twintage, is it? Which I will put a link in the description of social media deeds with these two beautiful and fascinating ladies. Can we talk about that pink and blue there? That's stunning.
Could I just talk about the pieces
Yeah,
quickly?
yeah.
I know you've got a few pieces up here as well, if we've got time. So this is a gorgeous piece as well from the 20s, 30s. It's got a gorgeous print on it, which I love. Robes, loungewear was very popular.
You always see them in bed with some white chocolates and a gorgeous
and this is a fab print. Look how modern that is. It's like almost like a helter-skelter.
That's crazy. That just looks
Quite
contemporary.
psychedelic, isn't it?
Quite psychedelic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then also this piece was so during the 1930s in America, the Depression era. So this is made from feed sack cotton, the fabric, and so basically women, especially in rural places, would make dresses and items out of the cotton feed sack that they got from animals to feed the animals. And then they cottoned on, sorry, not a con, sorry. And the actual manufacturers of the feed would actually deliberately choose certain prints and fabrics for the women to. So that's quite make, do, amend as well, because.
So what did they use
very
to dye it, Kirsty? What did they use to create these patterns?
No, just it's printed cotton, so I guess just quite sort of different. I think they were quite bright actually.
Yeah.
So they probably used very bright colours. Yeah, I think they used a number of different colours, and
I love that little lace detail as well.
Yeah,
I
it's
just,
cute,
I just love
modesty.
the prints. They're just very cheery and like
Ditzy sort of prints.
yeah,
aren't they?
cheery. And I suppose that's what you needed in the depression era, wasn't it?
Well,
we
let's get
wanted to
them
be
out
cheered
now
up by the
because
clothes that we wore.
we're all at the workwear.
Oh yeah, the workwear.
Yeah.
You've got quite a bit.
Yeah, so if I talk about a few pieces now, Paula.
Okay,
so
of course.
this is
Oh yeah, the pink.
so this is an American piece
So
that I collected from
gorgeous. Oh my god,
online.
that's
and it's
stunning.
actually a workwear suit. So
For
we
what
have
type
the
of work?
So I think it was probably used in factories, that kind of work.
Wow, so in them days if you went to the factory you got to wear nice outfits
I know,
like that.
amazing.
That's amazing.
So it's like high-waisted trousers here, quite sort of flared, and then the top which could be tucked in or worn out. So very practical pieces,
Absolutely
but
love
with a lot
that.
of style as well.
Really
Hardware and fabrics.
Yeah, hardware
and
and
again,
fabrics.
that looks like it was bought recently.
Yeah.
It's in
Just love the
such
detail
great,
of the pockets
great
here.
condition,
The
but it has got
triangle
that
pockets.
quirkiness that you don't see now, if you know what I mean, and
Definitely,
that
yeah.
tailored. I mean, just think for work in a factory, there was that attention to detail that people who work in offices probably don't have now in modern clothes.
Definitely.
These are some original 1940s dungarees.
Oh,
I'm not
love
sure whether they're for a man or a woman, I'm not actually sure. But it's got the CC41 label inside as well. So would have been British and worn during that period because of the label.
It's incredible to think that that's been worn for manual labour,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yet we're still looking at it now and it's still wearable.
And this piece as well, another piece from that period. I'm not
Oh,
sure whether
I
this is
like that.
American or not. I'm not sure, but it's a all-in-one, which is fab, with denim sort of
Didn't
hardware and
David Bowie
material.
used to wear things like that?
Probably,
at some
yeah,
point?
probably, yeah. All comes around, doesn't it? Fashion
Yeah,
and cycles.
And here we have a really special piece, highly collectible now. These are actually original land girls, so women's land army breeches. So these would have been worn in the fields. So this would have been, So these would have been worn with a shirt and a knitted jumper, hand knitted green jumper, and a tie. Also with long socks, woolly socks.
So
socks and
even though
boots.
people were working on the land, they'd still make that effort and have a little tie and look smart.
I think maybe that was maybe worn more for sort of more formal occasions. In the actual fields, they would, roll up their sleeves, and be practical, because obviously they're going to be doing often hard work, really hard work in the fields, men's work as it's called, or as it was called then. There are also a branch called the timber corps, so there were women like loggers as well, cutting down trees and working with timber. They had a slightly different uniform.
Same with
Similar
factories, like there were people, in fact our nan worked in an ammunitions factory, and mechanics, all sorts of...
Can we just touch on the position of women and fashion? Because that's something we were talking about before. And like the 40s seems to see a lot of emancipation, women doing traditionally male jobs. And it kind of changed a lot in the 50s. How is that reflected in fashion, do you think?
Yeah, I haven't got that many 50s pieces. But yeah, definitely we're talking about that, how I almost think it was like, for women anyway, it was almost a step back, because after, like you say, trousers became quite commonplace, but they weren't before that. It was very frowned upon to women even wearing trousers. Would you believe? You wouldn't think it now.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
isn't it?
and
It was acceptable in certain circumstances, so even in the 40s it was acceptable for women to wear trousers
For
in
work.
the factory and for work,
But not
for
probably
workwear, but not
going out or whatever in the
not
evening.
in public.
yeah, but still there was the, like you say, emancipation, more practical clothing due to, like you say, taking on the men's work because they were off at war. So the 50s very much went kind of the opposite, and it was kind of, I get it, it was kind of like
It was a reaction, wasn't
yeah,
it?
against, they
Alien
wanted
thesis,
glamour,
antithesis
but
from
women,
one
From
extreme to
austerity,
another.
because austerity was very, very
Austerity.
hard.
Yeah.
Look, talk about the glamour of the 40s. It was extremely hard for many,
Yeah.
many people, and
Well-
people were just basically sick of so many years of austerity.
But I do think there was also a backlash against, it was called Christian Dior kind of penned it the new look, or it was penned the new look with the huge skirts, because it came in the sort of later 40s, sorry 47 I think, but Britain still had restrictions, so it was still frowned upon a bit, because it's like we're
Of course,
restricted
an
and we
outcry at the
can't,
time, it really
it was
did.
actually probably illegal to use so much fabric.
So many yards of fabric
Yeah,
for a skirt.
but it was, to me, the backwardness was the whole, everything was very corsets, so the corset, the waist very tight.
So did people wear
hips.
corsets in the 50s?
Yeah,
And they
or
did-
like a
Tiny
modern
waist.
version of a corset.
Yeah.
And they didn't wear them in the 40s? Or did they wear them in the 40s?
I think they were kind of different. Maybe that's another
Series, Twintage series.
another episode for vintage underpinnings and lingerie.
Underpinnings.
Yeah,
Um,
might be nice.
Because that's really, really
But
important.
it was the kind of restrictedness, and then women also were seen going back to the home and not going to work, because that was the men's jobs and the men's work. So women would be expected to stay at home again, be the homemakers, look after the children.
And most importantly, look totally glamorous and immaculate doing it, like they'd stepped off a movie. Set,
when
which is
you
totally
see-
unrealistic.
So when you see movies and she's got the gorgeous skirt and the stilettos and the hair's nice and the lipstick's on, well, women actually really like that in them days. Is that like a realistic depiction?
I don't know whether that really realistic, but I think women, I've been told that women, you were very much frowned upon if you didn't go out without a hat and gloves on, for example. Like or like going to, like, say, church, you'd be very much frowned upon if you didn't have your gloves and your hat. It was that kind of, that's still in the 50s. Yeah, you've got a few more, before we go on to the 60s a bit, you've got a couple more 40s pieces, haven't you?
I'd like to
Sorry,
show, yeah.
that's all right.
Yeah,
So I
that's
think this is
great.
actually a late 30s piece, this one. It's really, really
Oh, how
rather fun.
fun. That's
So this is
fun.
what we call a playsuit. So it's actually, although it looks like a dress at first glance, it's actually shorts. So you can see that.
Very modern, that. I can
yeah,
imagine
very
that in the shops
practical.
today.
That's
Novelty
crazy.
print as well,
Because
which is
they're
very collectible.
fashion.
So There's little sailboats on there. I don't know if you want to zoom in on that.
Yeah, sailboat print, fabulous.
Yeah, it's just
Cotton.
really fun practical
A
piece,
lovely
you know.
shade of pink as well.
And you know, you could ride a bike with it, not
So what age group would wear that at the time, do you think?
Young, would you say?
youngish, but I think
Like teenage girls?
yeah, I mean, I've seen original
20s.
photographs of women wearing playsuits, you know, of sort of any age really. Yeah, so I think just something practical, something to wear on holiday, at the beach, on a bicycle. Speaking of which, you've got a pair of original 1940s high-waisted
They're
shorts
quite
here.
fashionable as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah,
high-waisted
they
short.
Yeah.
Everyone wears
And all
them.
these kind of styles are being reproduced now.
That's
it's a really
crazy.
quality.
That's from the 40s,
Yeah.
you know.
I know it's
Isn't
mad,
it?
It's really
You would
crazy.
think it would, yeah.
And
So modern.
also just
Yeah.
this lovely piece here, which is
Green.
called
Oh,
chartreuse. Chartreuse. Yeah,
stunning.
chartreuse. So it's like a lime green, and then it's
Love the
contrasted with
colour,
this
it's
brown,
So gorgeous.
this brown sort of trim and buttons down the back here.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Lovely piece, isn't it?
Yeah.
So people think of the
Absolutely.
40s being quite drab and the prints and the colours, but well, this is 40s.
We'll
Look
go
at
back to what you
prints.
said because we've seen it in black and white, so we're
the-
getting
yeah,
a false.
yeah, you do exactly.
Yeah, that's not what it was
but
like.
colour was actually prints, and there were actually colourful items. Obviously, a lot of the pieces you get a lot of black dresses in the 40s, but that's also because I only sort of realised this recently. It makes so much sense. Blackout material wasn't restricted, so you get a hell of a lot of
Yeah.
1940s dresses now because there's so many of them. They're quite easy to come by in the sort of vintage circles because people would use blackout material to
Oh,
make the
wow.
dresses because it wasn't
It's amazing,
restricted.
isn't it?
There's a lot of resilience in the 40s, which I think we should like draw on, and less waste. There seems to
Yeah.
be very little waste, which also reflected on the allotments and people growing their own food. Everyone
yeah,
could
of
do
course.
that. Now no one hardly
Yeah.
can do it.
Yeah.
But I like to think of people in the lipstick garden and that, because I do, and I know when we meet up to do gardening, we still get dressed up. It's just
Yeah.
the way
Yeah,
we
just the way
are,
we
and
are,
there's
isn't
nothing wrong with that. It's nice to see people with the lipstick on, looking beautiful, but digging as well.
Yeah.
Why do you all have to wear this fucking cagoule? Your hair all horrible and grey,
I
no
think-
makeup on. That's never
No.
going to be me or
No,
you, is
I
it?
think it's down to personal choice, you know, what you feel comfortable doing, you know.
But I do know what you
but yeah,
mean.
that
It's like
does-
it's kind of the opposite world you think people think of, but it's nice. Yeah, nice to be.
So if we just go back to the
That's a
40s
nice
again.
suit.
So this is a 1940s plaid wool suit with this beautiful, sort of almost like heather print, isn't
It's
it?
shocking
Heather
how
colours.
much, how well that's
So this is
aged.
actually
I
a
know, isn't it?
CC41.
It's just unbelievable.
And tailoring was so big in
CC41,
the 40s. Tailoring was very important,
Let's see the
wasn't it?
So
inside.
that's
Oh
a
my-
CC41.
But it just looks like it's hardly been worn.
I know,
And
it's
yet
gorgeous,
people
isn't it?
did wear the clothes
And
a
then
lot
that's the
then,
skirt.
didn't they?
But tailoring was so important in the 40s. So you got a lot of kind of
yeah.
echoing kind of military wear as well in the 40s, and the silhouette was very like big shoulders
Yeah.
and sort of
Kind of butch,
yeah.
really.
Quite
wasn't
masculine.
it?
quite
Quite
masculine.
masculine.
Yeah, androgynous
But
masculine.
I mean, a suit would last you years. I mean, you know, and it's so versatile as well. You could pair the
Who
jacket
do-
with a dress.
Who do you think would have
a
worn
skirt
that
with a
suit?
blouse, you know,
What sort of
separate.
woman would have wore that? What sort of
every day,
profession?
really.
Just
Not,
going
not,
to the
yeah,
office?
not a particular profession,
or-
and it was kind of normal day wear,
Yeah.
really. To wear
So
a
even if
suit,
you
wear a
just went
suit.
out shopping, you'd wear that.
Some
Yeah.
people would.
in
It's
winter
really
maybe,
smart.
or like I
Winter,
say, the jacket over a dress, and maybe in the summer or spring months. Yeah, it was very much the kind of staple, really,
But it would last.
of a woman's wardrobe.
And during coupons and rationing, it would have taken up a lot of coupons to get to have a suit, but it would last. And the whole point of the
Oh,
coupon
that's
rationing
really
was
nice.
to make quality items that would last. So you get a lot of footwear with the CC41, but it was so quality. The leather, like insoles, leather outer soles, and just so amazing because it was brought in to help have a certain quality of.
I can't get
Yeah.
over how much I learn from you two.
Oh,
Every time we have a discussion like this, I get more and more educated and more interested in vintage fashion and seeing, why, everyone perhaps should feel like that. But that coat
It's gorgeous,
is
isn't
divine.
it? So this is a
colours are
gorgeous
just
coat that I picked
gorgeous
up when
as
I was
a
in New
wall.
Zealand, actually. and I lived over there. I don't know whether you want to zoom in on the label, but it's a really gorgeous label. So it's a picture of a woman walking a dog.
Oh wow, really? We love our old labels.
And what I really like about this piece as well, it's got like a belt at the front, the gorgeous belt buckle there, and big probably Bakelite buttons, early plastic, deep pockets, very practical, sharp shoulders, and then at the back it's a swing coat. So the actual belt is sort of just in the middle.
A half belt, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a half belt. So from the front it's a belted coat, and then from the back
That's
it's
kind of
got
like
that
the best
swing.
of both worlds, because you've got the swing but the cinched waist as well.
I've got a coat like that. Actually, I got it recently, a nice plaid one, tartan
Again,
one.
that's in fabulous condition. So how did people look after the clothes? Was everyone into dry cleaning then, or hand washed? What did they do to preserve them to this, quality?
I think a lot of time they brush them, so the clothes brushes were a thing, which we don't really use much nowadays.
What did they do? Get rid of hairs?
Yeah,
and
and even dirt, some
Do
like
they?
dust and dirt, just use a brush to brush the material. I mean, I think people just took a lot of care of their clothes. It's not like today where we live in like such a throwaway society where clothes are worn maybe once or twice. They were built to last, and they needed to be built to
What
last.
advice would you give, say, someone watching this video is really getting interested in vintage fashion, but they feel like a little bit nervous, they feel a bit scared, like what era am I going to pick? What advice would you give them?
I think for me, and I probably think for Kitty as well, fashion for us is fun. It should be fun, and although we can learn a lot from it and socially, I think that I like to say there are no rules. I think you should be able to wear what you want, mix eras, mix styles, whatever you feel comfortable with, because at the end of the day it's an expression of yourself, and that's personal to you, isn't it?
Can I just show a couple of accessory pieces?
Yeah,
Is that
go on,
okay?
yeah.
They're over there. So, my assistant,
Your lovely assistant.
my lovely assistant. So you've got some nice accessories there. Just a
Can
couple
I,
of
can
pieces.
I just talk about, like, say if I was that nervous person, which just we all
Yeah,
know I'm
just
not,
talk-
but pretend for a minute, and I'm like, hello, I really want to get into vintage fashion. Could you provide me with a personal service of what suits my personality and my physique and my
Definitely.
interests and what I do?
Yeah.
So could you get stuff out and suggest to me what I would like?
Definitely, yeah. So quite often when we do actual events, we try and organise our clothing into sizes or approximate sizes, so we can pick out a particular size or era from a rail. I think regarding colour and pattern, I think it's what you're drawn to. I think most people have favourite colours or favourite kind of styles, and
And I know you do
Yeah.
a special service for trans girls as well, and people like exploring,
definitely.
born as men, exploring like their femininity or
Definitely.
gender fluidity and things
Yeah.
like that. You two really.
I think we've always, it's ever since you had a shop, haven't we? We've been very inclusive.
Yeah. Try to be very
It's really,
inclusive.
really important, isn't it?
And with sizes,
people need to be, everyone needs to be
Included.
included and treated with respect.
Yeah, and we also try to source sort of more realistic, not realistic, so that's the wrong word, because we all come in different shapes and sizes. I suppose we try to include a variety of sizes and plus size vintage. We try to sort of source, don't we? So, because a lot of people say, oh yeah, but you won't have my size, because everyone thinks it will be tiny sizes. But I do get people think that, and why. But we do try to source like a range of sizes that will fit all sorts of people.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, and should I just talk a little bit about my accessories?
Yes, do.
Fancy? So,
I like that purple one.
Do
She's
you?
really pretty.
I love accessories. Hats are one of my favourite things. I've got a few hats here, but I've got so many more. So, and this talked about it briefly, didn't we? So the whole fedora in the 1940s was very popular. So again, going to that sort of quite androgynous, sort of
I love that
military,
look. It's
yeah.
gorgeous.
So little
I
toy
think
sort of
what
tilts.
you've got to really, really say that's important about hats, especially in the 1940s, is they weren't actually rationed.
What?
Yeah,
Really?
so they weren't rationed. So
It's crazy.
yeah, I mean they were very expensive. Prices went up because production costs went up, but they weren't rationed.
A lot of them made from felt, aren't they?
Yeah.
So, and other materials, because I've seen pictures of hats that were made with like garden wire, like cellophane, plastic.
Garden wire,
Yeah, all
honestly.
sorts.
Honestly.
And this is another
so
little-
imaginative.
But it's inspiring though, because you know, who knows when resources are going to dry up,
Exactly.
and these techniques mean that we could still have fashion from things that are already there without consuming more resources.
Yeah.
So the 40s can present us with so many good ideas.
What's other quite interesting as well, I read about the 40s and hats, and because obviously France was occupied fairly early on, that hats were very extravagant in France, and they deliberately basically produced and made hats that were really outrageous. So the German occupiers were quite kind of, it was unpatriotic for the French people to do that, and a bit kind of like, look what we can do.
A little bit two fingers up to Hitler.
Yeah,
kind of
to
thing,
Hitler really, because they made the hats really, really extravagant.
French people are just incredible.
I know. So we've got some tilts which are really interesting.
Cute.
So they would be worn, I'll just take this off, they'd be worn like this, which I love. This is my favourite area of hats, late 30s, sort of early 40s. So they'd be worn like this, and then it'd be pinned.
That's cute.
And then this one too. But what's quite,
That one?
what was also
that
quite,
lovely?
so well, you're going to a bit of hairstyles now. So
Did I
basically,
try that one?
yeah, so Susie's going to try that one on. So basically, because of the hairstyles, the hair would then
wow.
be
gorgeous.
so hats
That
would be
really
made
suits you.
differently. So hats,
That is beyond belief. It's so gorgeous.
kind of the hats and the snood at the back, and the kind of rolls and things with your hair. I don't know loads about vintage hairstyle, but then this is a 30s hat. So 30s hats were very much kind of shallow, weren't they? So your hair,
Shallow crowns. Yeah.
shallow crowns. So it's very different. So that would be maybe good with something like that. The 30s would go with the 30s dress. So your hair would be like finger waved, and it'd be quite flat, wouldn't it, to fit that? So the hairstyles and the hats would work together. So there'd be certain fashions. And then just quickly, these are beaded bags from
Like to show what?
probably from the 40s, would you say?
Oh, isn't that
30s,
lovely?
40s.
Yeah, 30s.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, so again, with rationing, these are actually made from wooden beads.
And they are Czechoslovakian in
Yeah.
origin.
Yeah.
Czechoslovakian beading.
Can I just pass you them? Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
And just the last little thing about accessories. This is a really interesting piece. This is from the 40s. Probably American, would you say?
It's so much fun.
Yeah, and it's made. You would not think this was from that old, from the 1940s.
No.
But it's been made with telephone wire.
What?
Telephone
Let me
cord.
see. Oh,
Isn't that fabulous?
that's so creative. So like avant-garde, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite out there, isn't
It
it?
looks like something in an art gallery.
Yeah.
Almost.
So lots of people collect these. They're quite desirable now, aren't they? Pieces,
can
you get
see
different
why.
colours and
I can see why.
patterns. So yeah. And there was just one more piece, didn't you? A really special piece you wanted to show,
Yeah.
wasn't there?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Fabulous, yeah. Really interesting piece, this one.
Yeah. So I've got my final piece that I'm going to be showing in this talk. And this is actually a
wow. It's a
1940s
matte press.
robe.
Oh, robe.
There's actually a version of this in sort of a maroony burgundy colour in the Imperial War Museum. So quite a few years ago now, we went to see an exhibition called Fashion on the Ration, sorry, which was really interesting. That's where I saw this piece. It's actually an early Horrocks, probably dated about 1946, so just post-war, and it's got a novelty patriotic wartime print on it. So there's the map of the British Isles, and then there are some Shakespearean quotes. I'll just read a couple off the back here. So there's this demi-paradise, this fortress built by nature against infection and the hand of wars. I think that says. This precious stone set in a silver sea. So yeah, so it's a really special piece. Just lots of fabric. You can tell this is probably a post-war as well, because there's quite a lot of fabric in the skirt.
There wouldn't have been that much.
Complete.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as much fabric in that pre-war.
So yeah, that's a really special piece there.
Yeah.
And that was the fabric was designed by, I think, Marnie Tickle.
Yeah, that was the artist.
yeah.
So yeah, you got a lot of propaganda prints in the 40s, and different countries used different things, and we had lots of like scarf, like when I say propaganda, it was like used to sort of
bolster the spirit and through the dark days, especially of like the Blitz.
loose lips cost lives, is it, and stuff like
Loose
that.
lips sink ships.
Sink ships, and and they had like sort of dig for victory and like lots of
definitely
scarves,
a lot
very
of snappy slogans to get people involved in the war effort.
and colours as well, and same with France, the tricolour and red, white and blue we used a lot in
But not only did it affect clothing, it also affect accessories and jewellery.
yeah.
There's a lot of novelty jewellery from the era, which were sort of made out of sort of found materials, plastics, buttons, and really interesting.
Just end, I suppose, on
Okay.
this. Sorry.
Yeah,
Right. The 60s. Just I've got a couple of pieces, but I suppose just that after the kind of the 50s. The 50s was still fun. I know we talked about it being quite restrictive for women, but yeah, there was a lot. There were lots of novelty prints in the 50s, and you get kind of teenager wear for the first time. People had their own money, like teenagers, and this is very much a teenage kind of print, young person dress, and it's got actually kids on it, teenagers, like together with like
sweet.
hearts and stuff, like
Dancing on
sweethearts,
those.
yeah, dancing in like in the countryside and leaping about and stuff. It's very fun. Kind of cotton, so yeah, that's fun. I do like the novelty prints of the 50s, but then you get the sort of sexual revolution of the 60s, the civil rights movement,
Women's
women's lib. So you get a lot of very bright, colourful pieces. You get the mini skirt obviously coming in, but this is like a Hawaiian print, which was very popular in the
Wow, it's
60s.
gorgeous.
So very
Neon.
acid, neon.
Neon
It's like
colour,
it's
yeah.
basically neon, that isn't it? Acid. And you kind of get the late 60s, early 70s kind of
Wow.
psychedelic prints here. This is
That's
yeah.
really
In
nice.
fact,
Is
just
that yours?
so this piece here is actually St. Michael's, so
Marks and
Marks
Sparks.
and Spencer's. Quite sort of psychedelic 1960s swimsuit.
Is that trousers? Is that like a
And
trouser
this is
piece?
this is actually a psychedelic, yeah, all in one.
Oh, it's stunning.
So yeah, so obviously music and fashion very influenced by each other as well.
Yeah.
60s, psychedelia kind of era. So yeah, we have this fabulous piece here.
Practical and fun.
Yeah, practical fun and just very colourful and just
But you can see as well where the kind of modesty was still in vogue really in the 60s. Because, you know, by today's standards, this swimsuit is kind of quite covered, or shall I say?
yeah. So that one is that is still quite modest, isn't it?
And obviously there were other examples of 1960s swimwear. I think there was a famous topless swimsuit as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, space age.
It's
sort
in a
of.
song. It's in a song, a famous song by
Oh.
Peter Starstadt.
Yeah. Did you want
Well, I'm just really happy that I've learned so much today about vintage fashion from the fascinating and beautiful twin sisters, Kissy and Susie. Please visit them on their Instagram, which is Twintage, which I will put all their links and Etsy links and everything,
Sorry, shameless plug.
shameless plug?
into the description. But if you come to Earth News, you meet them at some point because we all like hanging out. So thank you so much for watching this video. Please support Kissy and Susie and don't support fast fashion because it's ruining the environment. So thank you so much, and thank you so much to you, beautiful, entertaining, light-filled girls.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Paula.
Yeah, thanks.
We'll all
so
see
much
you
for watching,
soon.
guys.
See you in the next one. Bye. 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 Bye.